Welcome to this week's On the Fly. I'm your host, Gene DeFilippo, and our guest this week is the multi-talented, longtime friend of mine, Bill Hancock. Bill, welcome to On the Fly.
Gene, thank you. Thanks for having me, and it's great to see you.
Well, thank you. You know, Bill, a lot of people don't realize what you've done in your background. Please take a few minutes and talk about the trifecta. But I want you to take us from Oklahoma on. But the trifecta, people don't know you are the executive director of the NCAA basketball tournament, the executive director of the BCS, and now you're the executive director of the college football playoff. Take us through some of that, would you please?
Well, thank you, Gene. It's a matter of being in the right place at the right time. I did go to school at Oklahoma, inherited our family business when my father died when I was 23. The business was the family newspaper, Small Town Daily. And boy, you talk about learned discipline. I mean, if you don't go down there and put that paper out every day, your customers are not very happy with you.
I can imagine.
But I got a chance to go to work at the Big 8 conference and gave up my legacy at the newspaper to my brother, and started at the Big 8, spent 11 years there, 16 years with the NCAA Final Four, and now this is my 18th year in college football. I've just been very lucky, Gene, and love what I get to do. And sometimes I stop and think about, good grief, I got to be the director of the best event in college basketball, and now I get to be the director of the best event in college football. What a dream come true.
Wow. You know what? Really, really well deserved, extremely talented, and very, very humble. We all know that. Couple of things. When you were doing the basketball tournament, how was that different for you than doing the BCS?
Well, I love the tournament, and this will be my 44th Final Four in a row this spring in Houston. And I think, Gene, I'm just shooting for 70. I mean, why not?
Why not? That's great.
My first one was Magic and Bird, and I know you know that that game was in 1979 back in Salt Lake City. People don't know who the other teams were. That's a good trivia question. The other two teams in that Final Four were DePaul, and then the fourth one was Penn.
That's right, with Bill Bradley.
Well, no, it was after Bill.
Oh, it was after Bill?
Yeah, after Bill, but it was the last time we had an Ivy in the Final Four, so it was awesome.
That's right, Bradley. Bradley played at Princeton.
That's right.
Who was? Do you remember anybody on that Final Four team from?
Yeah, I usually do, but I'm not calling names at the moment. But it was a terrific Final Four, and of course, Magic and Bird were the players of the year, and to see them reach the championship game was awesome. But we borrowed a lot of principles of the tournament when I came over to football. I'll tell you, I love, as much as I love college basketball, college football in terms of interest, viewership, obviously attendance is on a different level.
Yeah. Bill, let's get right into it. People are so interested in this 12-team football playoff, and whether it happens in 24, 25, 26, nobody knows. But what are some of the logistics that you and the committee and also the commissioners are working through?
Part of it is a matter of separating the details from the major logistical things that you have to decide before you decide to have an event. So the number of hotel rooms for a team, you can work that out. But when to play the games, you kind of need to know that before you can decide. So we know we are going to have a 12-team tournament in 2026. And we're in the middle right now of deciding whether or not we can start early, as you referenced. So we could start in the 24 regular season. We're getting kind of late to make that decision, but we could still, or we could wait till 2025 or 26. And all the details. I've started making a list, and it's just I'm in the hundreds.
Can you
Uh,
share some of them with us, Bill? Because people be so interested.
yeah, it's fascinating. The first round games will be on campus.
Okay.
So tickets, for example, how many tickets does a visiting team receive? And the theory right now is that more or less it will be a home game, but you have to have tickets for the visitors.
Right.
Um, some of the communities don't have hotels right there. And so how far away would we be willing to go for that visiting team to stay? Um, how many rooms for the visiting team? What kind of meeting space? When do they need to arrive? You'd normally arrive on a Friday before a Saturday game, but do you want to do that with a game of this magnitude? Do you want to say you need to try to come on Thursday? So that's just the tip of the iceberg for the for the really cool details that we will get to work through over the next several months.
Yeah. Bill, having been an AD, exams have also have to be an issue. I'm on the board of the Fenway Bowl this year, and there's 5 teams that are unable to attend the bowl from the AAC and the ACC simply because of exams. They're right in the middle of exams on December the 17th. That's got to be something that you've spoken about.
Yeah, that's an issue for us, exams and commencement. Now, I will say on the other side of that is when I was doing the tournament, there were a lot of times that we had to set aside space for exams to happen. And schools would send a proctor and they would actually do the exams at the tournament site. And as you've been through the sports that you have, that happens in track and field, baseball, softball. So we deal with that often in our world. And gosh, we have to remember these are college students. So yeah, we are thinking about exams. And one thing about exams, we did a survey 3 or 4 years ago. And every day from like December 3rd to December 23rd, some school in America is in exams.
Yeah, yeah. That's why I was asking how you would handle that. But there's bigger numbers in football, but we've done that in basketball. We've had academic people come on the road with us, and on a day off, take the exams.
And it
So
works. It
and it
works.
does work. Yeah, it does work. Anything else? What are some of the other logistics that you're dealing with?
Well, you think about travel and you would think about that we would probably have to reserve charter aircraft for the teams, reserve them a year out and just say, hey, keep your aircraft on hold. We may need you. Um, you think about media. A lot of stadiums on campuses don't have the kind of media backstage space that we need for football. And you remember the space that we always set aside in basketball. We don't at this point intend to have a threshold for stadium size. In other words, if you qualify to host a first round game, and those will be the seeds 5 through 8 in this 12-team tournament, of course. If you qualify, you host. And if you have a 20,000 seat stadium, you know what? You get to host. That's where we are now. And frankly, I doubt that will change.
Okay, so that gives everyone an opportunity. We're
Yeah.
going to have some games where we're going to be in Michigan or Wisconsin or Massachusetts or somewhere where it could be cold and snowy. Are you going to ask if there's a dome near there to play there, or are you going to let the teams play on their home fields?
We intend to let them play on their home field. And the way the policy is written now is that you play on campus unless the campus team wants to move the game off campus. We're even looking as deeply as the NFL uses a thing called the Clegg meter, CLEGG meter, I think it is, to determine the hardness of the field. And fields get cold in December. We realize that. We also realize that the Joe fan sitting at home is going to love a cold weather game. We all know how much we all love snow games. And I don't know how a Southern team would feel about going to play in a cold weather site for a first round game. And of course, nor how would a cold weather site feel about hosting a game. I just know that coaches would love to have those games on campus if they earn that right. And remember that it's only 4 teams that will host each year.
And we are we are college institutions, and it's fair for our fans, but our students too, to if they qualify to play a home game. I think it's going to be great. I think we're going to have games like the Ice Bowl or the snowballs. We're going to have games like that we'll remember for years.
Yep. Yep. I
Yeah.
agree.
How does what explain to everybody what your committee does when they come in on Monday and then you meet Monday and all day Tuesday? People would really like to know what you do.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. And it's probably good to make a distinction here that we have a management committee who runs the CFP. Those are the conference commissioners and the Notre Dame athletic director. And they're our bosses. So we report to them day to day, and then they run the event. Then we have the 13-person selection committee who selects the teams, and they come into Dallas that's where our office is. They come into Dallas 5 weeks on those Mondays and Tuesdays leading up to the ultimate weekend, which of course is a selection weekend. They arrive Monday about midday. Some come in on Sunday, but others come on Monday. And first of all, they have meetings of conference point persons, and they'll spend an hour or so talking about the conferences, the teams in the conferences. And then they basically sit down and begin ranking the teams. And the steps of the ranking are fascinating to me. There's 7 rounds of rankings. The practice is get small groups of teams that can be evaluated against each other. You never throw down your top 25 and talk about them all at once, but you create small lists of teams, talk about those, and then rank those. So the first 3 rounds, you wind up ranking 3 teams per round. So 1 through 9 get ranked in the first rounds, in the first 3 rounds. And then the last 4 rounds, we rank 4 teams. So we rank 4 teams in those 4 rounds for the last 16. It's a fascinating process. We just finished what we call mock selection exercises, where journalists, athletic directors, bold people from the community can come to Dallas and participate in an exercise, playing the role of committee members and ranking the teams. I love nothing more than to watch on television and have 2 announcers be talking about what the committee might be doing. And one of them says, well, that's not true because I went to the mock exercise and this is what I learned when I did it. Very deliberate, very detailed process. And we want to make sure the committee knows everything about every team before they sit down each week to do those rankings.
So this involves a lot of homework during the week. There's that 13-person selection committee is looking at a lot of tape during the week, and they're coming in on Monday afternoon ready to tell what they've seen.
They are. We issue iPads to them and they download games. They can choose what kind of cut they want to watch. Do they want to watch offense, defense? They want to watch high end zone. They have coaches film. Then they also have the broadcast of the game. And the broadcasts are probably what most of them use. If they want to, they can watch a cut down version of a game. And you can watch a game in 40 minutes if you have no time between plays and in between periods, et cetera. You can watch a game for 40 minutes in 40 minutes. And a lot of the committee members will download the games onto their iPads and watch on their flights on the way to Dallas. I would say most of them, Gene, watch anywhere from 10 to 15 games every weekend. And another thing that's interesting to me is watching games is important for some members, but for others, the statistical data is more important. And for others, it's who did you play? Where did you play them? How'd you do? How was your strength of schedule? And all those different approaches are fine with us. As a matter of fact, we like it. Good grief, if we wanted one approach, we'd just have a one-person committee member.
Right.
So it really works. We have a wide variety of people, different football experiences, and obviously people from all over the country.
I remember Barry Alvarez being on the committee and telling me that he watched so much tape because he did not want to show up and not be prepared, because everybody, the other 12, were going to be prepared. And he knew that.
That's in the culture. You better be prepared or you're going to get exposed.
Now, each of the 13 people, are they given a conference, a primary conference to watch and to report on?
Yep, they are.
And then do you have 3 that are just floaters? How do you do that, Bill?
Well, we have 2 point persons for every conference. The chair does not have a conference, and that's Boo Corrigan, of course, from North Carolina State. But the purpose of those conference point persons is for them to make sure they know everything about the teams in those conferences. They're not to be advocates. They don't lobby, but they are fact finders. And that's all a part of our philosophy, not to let anything slip through the cracks. It's in fairness to the teams, fairness to the players, to make sure you know everything about every team.
Oh, that's great. All right. Hypothetical. I know coaches don't like to answer hypothetical questions, but
the worst thing ever.
Let's say that maybe not this year, but in the future, in a conference championship game, a big time quarterback gets hurt, and maybe it's an ACL, and that quarterback might be done for the year. How would the committee react to that? Would there be some that would say, well, they deserve to be here? There are others that say, well, no, they're not the same team with the second team quarterback. Just what would be the different thoughts from the 13 committee members?
Here's what has to happen. You have to, first of all, hope that maybe you might have enough chance to see the team and how well they do with that second team quarterback. Maybe they play the second half of their championship game with him and he does well. Maybe he came off the bench and did well during the regular season. Otherwise, you just have to do your best to determine how the team will perform. You know how they performed during the regular season. They earned the right to get as far as they did. But we do have to look forward in that one case and say, how will they do without the player? And I know you remember this when it happened in basketball. What was it, 20 years ago? How about that? My light went off. We have automatic lights here in Texas. But remember when Kenyon Martin from Cincinnati broke his leg?
I do remember that.
In the
Yes.
championship game. And the basketball committee had to work it out. And they were going to be a #1 seed. Remember that, Gene?
Yes.
And
yes.
they wound up as a 2 or maybe 3, maybe a 3, and they didn't go very far without Kenyon Martin, who was a wonderful player. But that's kind of the same situation we would be in. Reward what happened in the regular season and try to figure out what they're going to do without him.
Very, very good. What other situations have you had come up that our audience would be interested in listening to?
You know, the committee considers a lot of things, but there's 4 broad tiebreakers if the teams look alike. And that is strength of schedule, head-to-head results, and basically 3 or the top 3 are results against common opponents. You have to consider strength of schedule when you're ranking teams. A 12-0 team that didn't play anybody hasn't given their players a chance to show what they can do against the top competition. And there's no magic number for strength of schedule. You can't do it that way. You just have to look at the schedule and sort of see how they played. Oh, we do have a strength of schedule ranking, but the statisticians tell us, don't make it too fine of a tool. It's more of a blunt tool. So strength of schedule is important. We do have head-to-head results, and those are important when the teams look alike across the board. But sometimes, especially by the end of the season, you sort of have to go against head-to-head sometimes, because one team has just proven over the season that it's better, even though it lost, that it is better. And common opponents becomes less important as you work through the season, as teams, particularly conference teams, get more common opponents, and sometimes the common opponents edge each other out. So, those are the factors. We would also look at what other particular factors affected the play of a team. Maybe you have an injury. I remember one year we had a team that lost to a conference opponent early in the season when they had 3 offensive linemen out. And well, this was Oregon and Arizona. Arizona beat Oregon earlier in the season, but Oregon was beat up. And then Oregon came back and won handily against Arizona in the championship game. So which team turns out to be ranked higher? Well, in that case, it was Oregon, despite the head-to-head, because of what they had done during the regular season. And also in our room, conference championships are important. That's another tie-breaking factor that the committee will have to look at. And if you win your conference, you have a little bit of an edge over a team that doesn't.
And you should. If you win your conference, you should have an edge. It's really important then, after hearing you, that ADs and coaches schedule some out-of-conference games that are against great competition, because it could happen that some of the teams that you play in your league are not quite up to par as to what they have done in the past, and your strength of schedule would go down. So you got to be very crafty at playing some out-of-conference games that matter.
A guy that has a good philosophy in that, Gene, is our great mutual friend, Joe Castiglione. Joe says we need to go play at least one top tier team. And then maybe another one that might be kind of middle, and then the other one may not matter as much. But you really need to have a nice resume. It just helps your chances. If you stumble along the way and maybe you didn't play as good a non-conference schedule, well, that's going to hurt you. But if you had a good schedule, and then it gives you just a little leeway to be able to stumble a little bit during the regular season.
See, I think so. I think so too. With the conferences getting bigger, Bill, and the ACC is going to a 3-5. Well, it could be one year that the 5 teams that you play really aren't as strong as some of the other teams in your conference who you're not going to play. So non-conference games are going to be important. That's a great point you made.
Yeah. And September football matters. I mean, people say, well, shouldn't it just be how you perform at the end of the season? No, it can't be. September has to matter, and it does matter. And there are games every year in September, and I'll see a result or watch a game on TV, and I'll say, boy, the committee is going to be talking about that game come December 4th.
Right. Sure. Bill, there's everybody's a critic. I mean, let's face it, everybody's got critics, but there are some people who have written that there will be in the second round games, there will be some fans that won't be able to afford to come, or will wait to see if their team gets into the finals, Final Four, whatever. I know you've discussed that. What are some of the thoughts on the committee?
Well, first of all, I want to talk about critics just for a little bit, because we are so lucky in college football and my previous life in college basketball that people care. They love what we're doing, and they love to be in my shoes. And a lot of them are very knowledgeable. So I love to talk to people about college sports, and I now happen to be in college football, but I certainly enjoyed it in basketball also. Um, the teams will have to travel. Their fans will have to travel. We had that in the tournament, of course. You had to travel 3 weekends. And in this case, if you go all the way, if you played in the first round game, you'd have 5. Um, but we think people will travel. College football is so popular, and I think, I don't know, take somebody like Penn State. Say they go to the South. Well, their fans are going to go, and they're going to have plenty of alumni near that stadium where they go play.
Sure.
Those people are going to go as well.
Yes, there's no question. If anybody wanted to really witness the passion of college football, that Tennessee Alabama game a couple of weeks ago was absolutely terrific. That was a great game, and there were some games this past week that were terrific. The excitement, the absolute love of college football by some of these fans. Oh, it's tremendous.
It's real passion. It's great.
It really is. Bill, how do you get selected to be one of the 13 members of the selection committee? I know people out there would love to hear it. Condoleezza Rice was one, and Barry Alvarez. And how do you get to balance the committee the way you want to?
Well, we created classifications of committee members. So there's former players, former coaches, former journalists, people from the community, and that's how Condi Rice became a member. And then sitting athletic directors, good balance. So your former coaches will look at a game a little differently than a journalist might, but a journalist has a great eye and a great mind for the game, and
he probably understands the statistics, which you spoke about earlier, better than some of the coaches.
Yeah, probably some analytical sense there. One of our journalist members in the past was Steve Weberg from USA Today, and he was very analytical about the teams and very devoted to not getting anything wrong. Well, they're all that way. So great cross section, geographic cross section. It's very important to have everybody, every area of the country represented. We do that, and I really love those committee meetings. It's well, the 16 years I spent with basketball is the most rewarding time I had in that sport. And now this will be our 9th year to have our committee in the football world.
That's amazing. Okay, I'm going to ask you another hypothetical, because this is what people really, really want to hear. Okay, you've decided now that the 3 teams that are going to be among the 4 are in, and the 4th and 5th teams are really, really tight. They're really close in choices here. Do all 13 people get a vote as to which of the 2 teams get in? How do you handle that?
We have recusals, and that means certain committee members have to sit out when teams are considered. And those teams are, if you went to school, if you attended a school, if you have a family member, brother, sister, child who works at the school now, or if you're compensated by the school in any way. And I think I said attended the school. That's not a factor. So it's if you're compensated by the school or have a family member that's compensated, then you have to be recused from that school. And what you do is basically leave the room, and you're just not involved in any discussion of that school or any voting involving that school. And it could be the 4 or 5 break, that one of those teams has somebody who's compensated by the school. Barry Alvarez had to leave the room when Wisconsin was talked about, but Barry didn't have to leave the room when his alma mater, Nebraska, was talked about. It's a good process, very similar to the one that we used in the NCAA basketball committee. And it works.
I remember the year you were working with CM Newton, and CM is a basketball expert, and was at the time was the director of athletics at the University of Kentucky, and he had to leave the room whenever Kentucky was talked about. Now, was he allowed to give his point of view before he left the room, or do you not take that?
Good question. They can answer factual questions. Did the left guard play in the fourth game of the season? Yes or no? So that's how that works.
Okay. You have really done a great job in thinking about everything that is going to come up, and this is one of the best podcasts we've had, because so many people want to ask you these questions, and me being one of them, I can't thank you enough for making time. Now, Bill, is there anything that you want to say that I didn't ask you about the committee, about anything that you want to talk about?
Let me give two things here, Gene, that I think are important to remember. First one is on expanding the playoff. 4 teams has been very successful. It's one of the most popular events on the sports calendar, and in terms of viewership, it's second only to the Super Bowl. But there's one reason to expand, one word, and that is participation. More teams, more student athletes, more groups of fans will have a chance to compete for the national championship. And then let me jump to the second part of my job, which is the selection committee. And the word there is integrity. Integrity. We start with the people on the committee who are high integrity people. And it's when you go in that room, you maintain the integrity of the people who were on the committee before you. So I would give those 2 words again, because they're so important: participation and integrity.
Great. I have one more question that I want to ask you. Let's say that Clemson is playing Alabama, or Georgia's playing USC in the championship game, or in the semifinals. How are the officials chosen for those games?
There's a group within the NCAA that assigns officials for all bowl games. And actually, they don't assign the officials. What they do is assign the conferences. So they will look for neutral conferences to officiate. I don't know, say we're talking about the Outback Bowl, and the Big Ten is going to play the SEC. Well, that group in the NCAA says, okay, we're not going to have a Big Ten and an SEC crew, so we'll put a Big 12 crew in that game. And that's what they do for our games also. So both semifinals will have neutral crews, and then the championship game will have a crew that's not representing any of the 4 conferences.
But you will get the best officials out of that non-participating conference, correct?
Yeah, we will. And the conference, every conference has a supervisor of officials, of course. And the supervisor will see, like, we'll tell them, okay, you get assigned, you have the semifinal game between Ohio State and Clemson. And then that coordinator will say, okay, here are the names of the officials that I'm going to assign to that game.
Okay. Wow.
And
There's
if you're
just so much to think about.
if you're not in the CFP, then you're going to have your crew is going to be working the championship game. And that's another reason why the conference commissioners like to be in the CFP, so they don't have to mess with officiating for the championship game.
Right. Right. Oh, that's great. Bill, what a pleasure. What a pleasure having you. You are one of the nicest people I've ever worked with. Your integrity is beyond reproach. You have been so successful. You have been on the Olympic committees. You're in 3 halls of fame. I mean, what a career you've had, and it continues. So thank you for making time to be on this podcast. You were absolutely terrific.
Thank you so much, Gene. It's been great fun. And anytime anybody gets to spend with you, the most popular person in college athletics, it's always a treat. When you walk away from talking to Gene DeFilippo, you feel better about the world.
Thank you, my friend. We're out of time for this week's podcast. I'm your host, Gene DeFilippo. I want to thank Bill Hancock for being our guest. And I want to thank our fans out there. Thanks for your time this time, and we'll see you next time.